right, let's try this again. I just tried a second ago and it did not seem like we were streaming. So I'm going to try it again and look for some people to throw some thumbs up or hearts to tell me that you're seeing this. And hopefully yeah. All right, so just here we go. We are here. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, good morning, everybody. We're coming to you live from the Buttonwood Park Zoo. Oh, lots of thumbs up now. That's great. It's a beautiful sunny day here at the zoo. Again, we are missing our visitors, so we're going to do a virtual keeper chat. Good morning, Sophia. And Carrie says she sees us, so that's great. So we're a couple of minutes behind, so I am going to pan directly to who you guys are going to be meeting today. And I've got, once again, Sam with us, one of our education specialists, and he's got a little guy with him that is another one of our animal ambassadors.
All right, good morning, everyone. So for those of you that tuned in last Saturday, you met our great horned owl, Cisco. Today we have another species of owl. This here is Sherlock, and he is an eastern screech owl. So despite being so small, Sherlock here is not a baby owl. This is a full-grown owl. So this is as big as he's ever going to get. Now, eastern screech owls are native to this area. In fact, you can find them all across the east coast of North America up until the Rocky Mountains. That's where their range goes, and they go from sort of the upper states down into lower Texas. So that's going to be their native range. And they're going to be hanging out in more forested areas and even into some urban environments like our cities and our neighborhoods. But if there's any fields or open areas, they're typically going to avoid those areas as well because these guys do nest in tree cavities. Again, they're cavity nesters, so that's why they need the trees to survive.
And we're already got a couple of questions that have come in. So I'm going to throw these in as you're speaking about them. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Mackenzie. Lindsay was asking, is it a barn owl? And I think we cleared that up.
Yeah, so this is an eastern screech owl. And kind of contrary to their name, eastern screech owls don't actually screech. They make much more of a trilling noise, where they call it a tremolo, where it gets higher to lower. Or they also make sort of a hoarse whinny. And a lot of ornithologists say that if you're going out into the woods and you hear an owl, it's pretty much the same thing as seeing it, because these guys are very, very elusive. But if you are out going for a walk in the woods, look up in tree cavities made by woodpeckers or other animals, and that's typically where those screech owls are going to hang out. On colder mornings, they might be right in front of the hole, sort of warming themselves up.
So Sophia, age 6, wants to know, how old is Sherlock?
Sherlock here is 12 years old this year, believe it or not. So in the wild, these guys are going to live to be about 10 years old, but in human care, about 20 years old.
And Tegan wants to know, where did we get him?
I'm not exactly sure where we got Sherlock himself. We do know that we do have him because he does have a wing injury, so he's not able to fly as a normal screech owl.
And Ryan, age 12, wants to know, how much do they weigh?
These guys can range between about 100 to about 250 grams. From about a week or two ago, when I weighed Sherlock, he's about 120 grams. So that equates to about 4.5 ounces. So it's a little bit less than a baseball.
And Charlotte wants to know, is Sherlock a boy or a girl?
Sherlock is a boy. Like most birds of prey, the boys and the girls do look very similar in their plumage. The only way you can tell them apart is if you had differences in weight. Females tend to be larger than the males. But we did have Sherlock sexed, so we know he is a male.
And I can tell you that we did that by sending one of his feathers for some DNA analysis. And they were able to tell us whether he was a boy.
Right, so unless your owl is laying eggs or you get their DNA test, you're really not going to know if it's a boy or a girl.
So Jen wants to know, are they endangered?
Eastern screech owls are not endangered. These guys are a least concern. So hopefully when you're walking around the woods at night, you can hear these guys.
And Hannah, age 8, wants to know, are they nocturnal?
They are nocturnal. They're almost exclusively nocturnal. Sometimes they will hunt a little bit more at dawn and at dusk. but they are going to hunt more at nighttime, typically within their first 4 hours of the night as well.
And Samantha wants to know, how well do they hear?
Like all owls, they have excellent hearing. So he does have sort of that small facial disc, so it allows any sound that hits his face to be directed to his asymmetrical ears, so he's able to pinpoint where that prey is coming from.
So I just zoomed in so you could get a good look at his eyes, because Bill said love those eyes.
Yeah, so his ears are going to be underneath of his feathers. So those things on top again are his plumicorns. So Cisco, again, last Saturday was the largest of the tufted owls in North America. And Sherlock, our eastern screech owl, is the smallest of the tufted owls.
I did not know that. All right, so Chloe, age 9, wants to know what their diet is.
In the wild, these guys will eat a lot of smaller things, so a lot of insects like flies and worms. They might eat some beetles, maybe some small reptiles and amphibians. They even might eat some small birds as well. But they also are going to eat some shrews and voles and mice. Nothing too much larger than their feet.
Lucas, age 9, said he saw him before in real life at school. So
yeah, it's really cool to see these guys up close.
So I zoomed in so you could get a good look at sort of his face and those little tufts in his eyes. But if I zoom out, you can actually see how small this little guy is. And one of the things I noticed when I started filming was how well he tended to blend into the tree that's behind him. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this type of feather is going to allow him to camouflage within the tree branches and everything else. So especially when they're in the tree cavities, they might puff themselves up and close their eyes, so they're really hard to see. But if they need extra protection, or if they're not necessarily within a tree cavity, they're going to make themselves really, really long, so they're going to stiffen up and point those plumicorns up and make themselves skinny so they can't be seen as well.
And do they come in different colors besides this?
They do. So Sherlock here is a gray morph, but we also have a red morph screech owl as well. We don't have them at the zoo, but those do exist. Typically more on the East Coast, there's more red morphs than gray. And then as you move further out west, there's more gray. But those colors, the red and the gray, don't mean it's a boy or a girl, or if it doesn't have any significant meaning. It's sort of like how humans have different colored hair, like red, brown, blonde, things like that. Screech owls will come in the gray or the red morph, and that has no impact on breeding or mating or anything like that. So
Ryan, age 12, wants to know, do they have any predators?
Yeah, so being so small, they're not going to be on top of the food chain like our great horned owl. So being young, when these guys are hanging out in tree cavities, a lot of other animals might go and prey on them, like weasels, and a lot of skunks and possums might go after them. One of their big predators too is going to be great horned owls too. So other owls are going to eat these smaller owls. So they really have to watch out.
Lainey, age 3, wants to know, why is his beak so sharp? Let's see if I can zoom in on that a little bit so you can see how...
Yeah, so his beak is so sharp because Sherlock here is a carnivore. So he only eats meat. So he's got those nice sharp talons on his feet to grab onto his prey. Those are sort of like his forks. So he can hold on to his food. And his sharp beak is like the knife. So if he catches something larger than his mouth, like a mouse or maybe like a large beetle, that sharp beak is going to allow him to rip it up into smaller pieces and then swallow it whole.
Jackson and Landon are wondering if he can turn his head all the way around.
Yeah, so like most owls, or all owls I should say, Sherlock here has 14 bones in his neck, unlike us humans who have 7 bones in his neck. So that allows him to turn his head 270 degrees, or 3/4 of a circle.
So almost all the way around.
Yeah, almost all the way around. You wouldn't want to go all the way around.
Thank you to Garrett, who donated. For folks that don't know, we do have a donate button that your donation goes directly to the Zoological Society, which helps us keep our educational programming and virtual programming like this going. So we thank you for that. Yep, they do. Risa says those eyes have such personality.
Yeah.
And they really do.
Yeah, so a lot of people might be wondering about their young. So screech owls typically have between 3 and 4 young at one time. It can range up to 7, but 3 or 4 is the usual average. And they won't push all those eggs out at once. It'll be sort of an every other day sort of thing, So there's going to be a staggering of those eggs. And they're going to be incubating their eggs for about a month or so. And then once those eggs hatch, they're going to stay with their parents for maybe like another month or two, become fledglings, and then still kind of rely on their parents for the next few months as well.
And so Logan's been with us for all of these chats, age 8, and he always asks the same question. Does he have a favorite keeper?
I don't think so. I think he's pretty indifferent to everyone right now. So right now is sort of like their breeding season. Screech owls tend to mate probably late February, March, April or so, and going into May and June as well. So Sherlock here has been hanging out in his nest box a little bit more, so he's being a little bit more feisty, kind of like protecting his fake nest.
And so Jen asked, do they hunt in packs? So I guess that kind of falls along the lines of, are these guys solitary? Do they hang out in groups?
They are solitary, but in human care, if you put screech owls together, they do just fine. They don't mind other owls. But in the wild, they're only going to be hanging out with another screech owl if it's their mates.
Okay.
Screech owls are monogamous, so they're going to stay with their mates their entire life. Occasionally, males might breed with a few other females, but I would say most screech owls stay with the same partner forever.
And Wayne, age 8, asks, why do they look like a tree? Can you move him over just a little so that we can kind of see him up against that tree?
Yeah, so these guys look like trees, so they can camouflage very, very well. So again, because they're small owls, they're going to be prey to other larger animals like skunks and possums, weasels, and other larger owls. So that great camouflage allows them to blend in so that they avoid those predators.
And let's see, missed a couple of questions here. Why do they call them screech owls?
My guess is because other people might have heard a screech in the night and seen an owl and just attributed it to them. I have seen reports of these guys making a screeching noise, but everything that I've seen about these guys, they don't ever screech. I've only heard the trilling or the horse whinnying.
How well can they hear? Olivia, age 7, is asked.
They're great at hearing, so they can hear their prey underneath piles of leaves or under some snow as well. The exact measurements of their hearing, I'm not totally sure on.
So Hannah, age 4, wants to know, does he have a favorite season?
Probably the warmer months. I imagine being out in the cold isn't the best for them. Even though they can puff themselves up and stay warm in the wintertime, that uses a lot of energy, so probably the warmer seasons are best for them.
And PJ, age 5, wants to know, does he have a mate?
He does not have a mate. So currently in his enclosure, he does have another screech owl who's non-releasable, and that's sort of just like his companion owl. And so again, they don't mind other owls, they just kind of hang out together. Or just other screech owls, excuse me.
Scrolling back to sort of take a look and make sure we haven't missed any questions here. And so the great horned owl, we talked about how wide his wingspan was. How big are these guys as far as their wingspan?
These guys' wingspan is about I think it's about 1.5 to 2 feet, so pretty short. These guys aren't going to be flying long distances. Typically an average flight is about 75 feet. I don't know the maximum speed they can fly. All I've been able to see is they do about 5 wing beats per second.
And do they spend any time on the ground? They're always in trees, correct?
They occasionally might go on the ground if they see something like an insect or like an amphibian or something. Again, these guys are incredibly small, so being on the ground, they are more open to predators and things like that. So they don't want to hang on the ground too much.
So Charlotte wants to see his toes. So I'm going to see if I can zoom in on his talons there.
Yeah, so even though he is really small, Sherlock does have those really, really sharp talons. They're like little needles. So I do still have to wear a glove when I handle him.
Do his eyes get smaller in the dark, the pupils?
Typically, their pupils do get a lot larger because they're going to be letting in a lot more light. But then during the daytime, they're going to get a lot smaller.
He's looking all over the place right now. So Ariel and Harper wanted to know what kind of predators they have. You mentioned great horned owls being
great horned
one.
owls, barn owls, might be eaten by barred owls, snowy owls, pretty much any larger owl. They also might be eaten by skunks and possums and weasels and things like that as well.
And how do they find their prey?
These guys are able to find their prey again with their awesome hearing, but also their great sense of sight. So you can see how large his eyes are compared to his skull. So those large eyes are going to be packed full of light detecting cells, so he's able to see his prey very well in the night.
And how often do we feed him?
We feed these guys about once a day, and we feed them at the end of the day too, to closely mimic their natural feeding habits.
And does he have a favorite food?
Favorites? I don't really think so. I think he's pretty indifferent. So here at the zoo we feed him some mice, so small and larger mice, occasionally some pieces of rat or some rabbits. We also might feed him some insects too, so some superworms or some crickets.
Oh, he's reacting. There's a snowblower or a blower in the background, so I think that caught his attention for the moment. Let's see if we've got any other questions that I've missed. I want to make sure.
Yeah, so some people, I think, have been asking and other things about jokes about owls.
Yes.
So,
do you know any owl jokes?
So, what do you call a magical owl? You call it Houdini. Or you say, what's an owl's least favorite subject? And that would be algebra.
Oh.
Yeah, so contrary to what people think when they put owls up on their billboards for colleges and things like that, owls unfortunately aren't very smart. So those large eyes take up a lot of space within their head, so there's not a lot of room in there for a brain. So they know how to sleep and hunt and everything else, but not really how to do
the wise old
else.
owl isn't so wise. So those jokes were for Donnie, age 6. Dory. I'm sorry, Dory, age 6. Wanted to know, did we have any good owl jokes? So you had 2 right off the bat, and I'm seeing lots of laughing faces. So people seem to enjoy that. How do these guys defend themselves?
These guys will defend themselves with their talons. So if they're backed into a corner, they're going to put their feet up and try and lash out with their feet to sort of get those predators away.
Do they puff themselves up at all?
They don't puff them. If you look into their nest box, they might puff themselves up. They're going to make their clacking noises and puff themselves up to look bigger. But if they're outside of their crevices and everything else, they're not going to puff themselves
up. So that clacking noise is sort of is that a warning noise?
Yeah, the clacking is sort of like, hey, get away from me. Like, I'm going to attack you if you get close to me. So a lot of people, unsuspectingly, if they're getting close to owl nests, they might have an owl go off their head because they're defending them.
So Cindy wants to know, is his last name Holmes? Because his first name is Sherlock.
And unfortunately is not Holmes. But our other owl's name is Watson, so we do have Sherlock and Watson.
So Annie and Harper were asking, how far can they turn their head?
So they can turn his head 270 degrees. Again, that's because of the 14 vertebrae in his neck. And they have all those vertebrae because those large eyes don't give him any room in his head for muscles to independently move his eyes. So he's only able to look straight, and he only has binocular vision.
And how do they sleep?
These guys will sleep intermittently in their crevices or in their cavities. They're not going to be sleeping the full time during the daytime. Again, they might wake up occasionally to check for predators and everything else. But they're going to sleep for a few hours at a time.
And how long do the babies stay with them?
For a few months or so. So from the time they're hatched to about fledglings is about another month or 2. But then after that, they're going to stay around their parents for a shorter time, for another couple of months. And these guys aren't migratory, so they're going to typically stay in the home range that they hatched in. That can just range from about 100 to 200 acres or so. So it's not a very large territory for these guys.
And you talked a little bit with the great horned owl about what you should or shouldn't do if you find what you think is a baby owl on the ground. Can you talk a little bit about that again?
Right. So since it is springtime, it is baby season. So you're going to see and maybe hear a lot of these owls out and about. And with those fledglings, they're going to be learning how to fly, so they're going to be hopping from branch to branch. Occasionally, they might fall out of the tree and onto the ground. If people see an owl on the ground, they might think that it's hurt or something like that. But I can guarantee that the parents are close by and they're watching their baby to make sure nothing is going to happen to it. And after a few days, that baby is going to eventually get back up in the tree.
Sage, age 6, wants to know, what are the babies called?
Those are called owlets. So if you want another joke, what do you call a wet baby owl? You call it a moist owlet.
You just have jokes for days on these guys. He's still looking around. I'm going to try and zoom in so you can get... I don't want to come too close to him with the phone because it might startle him, but you can see all the different colored feathers just over his beak.
Yeah, so that nice mottle color allows him to camouflage well with that.
So he's gray and he's got a little bit of brown in him, it looks like, just up near his head.
Yeah, sort of like the brown color is starting to emerge as sort of like a weird third color. That might be with a lot of the gray and the red morphs breeding together. But again, that color has no effect on their breeding habits or their mating habits, or if they're seen by predators or not.
And the pattern on his feathers is again, it's just camouflage?
Yeah, just like camouflage.
And does it vary from owl to owl, or do they all look the same?
I think it might vary by region. I imagine that more northern owls might have a little bit more white on them, whereas further south it might be a little bit darker. But I don't know for sure. I think there are a few subspecies of eastern screech owls.
Hayden, age 10, wants to know, does he play with toys?
He does not play with toys. He spends most of his day just up on perches. That's what a lot of birds of prey do. They're just going to be opportunistic and they're going to wait on their perches. Whether they might be sleeping or they're just going to be waiting for their next meal.
So Annie and Harper want to know, how many owlets do they have at a time?
On average, about 3 or 4, but they can have up to 7 at one time, which can be a lot for the parents to deal with. So the males are going to be the ones going out and catching all the food and bringing it back for the babies, and the mom's going to be defending the nest. But the males and females do take turns sitting on those eggs.
Lots of thumbs up. So Gene is coming in a little bit late. Says he's so handsome, wants to know how old he is.
Yeah, so Sherlock here is 12 years old this year. I think he'll be 12 in June. Here, living at the zoo, he's probably going to live to be about 20 years old. But in the wild, screech owls typically live to be about 10 years old. So again, this is an eastern screech owl. Their range is from the East Coast all the way to the Rocky Mountains. And then on the other side of the Rocky Mountains to California, then you have western screech owls.
Okay.
And those ranges don't really overlap. The Rocky Mountain is going to be their dividing factor.
He is a pretty bird. Just scrolling through. Folks, if you have more questions, this is definitely the time to shout them out. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. People love this little guy. Let's see if I can get in close again.
Yeah, so again, if you want to help these owls out, you can put up nest boxes in your house, outside of your house, higher up in trees. I believe it has to be about 15 or so feet high, but I don't think there's a maximum height you can put it up, and that will attract these guys because they are cavity nesters. Owls are great at keeping rodent populations down, so we don't want to use rodent poison because one single poisoned mouse can poison an entire owl family. So if you want a natural rodent side, just get some owl boxes and attract them.
And so Emily says, so they would be in our yards in this area.
Yeah, they might be. Eastern screech owls are really adapted to living in more urban and suburban environments as long as there's trees and there's holes in those trees for them to live in.
What do those owl boxes look like? Are they literally just a box with a hole?
You can literally just make a box and you put a hole in the front, just like you see a hole in a tree. I think there are supposed to be specific dimensions just so there's enough room in there for them to move around. And within your owl boxes, you don't really have to put anything in it. Screech owls don't make nests, so when they go into that cavity, The females sort of make the nest of what's ever in the bottom. So if there's some extra wood shavings from when the woodpecker drilled it out, or if there's feathers and waste or twigs from other birds, that's what the female is going to make her nest with.
And are these guys considered a bird of prey?
They are considered a bird of prey. So I believe birds of prey have to have 3 criteria. The first has to be their talons. I believe it's also their sharp beak and also their sense of sight.
Okay. And that's what makes them a bird of prey. Yep, Angie9 says he looks just like the tree, and he does. We've got that tree trunk right there, and with him right next to it. Definitely, his coloring definitely helps him blend in. Lots of people saying that this little guy is handsome.
Yeah, he is very handsome. And again, this is not a baby owl. This is a full-grown eastern screech owl.
And Dominic wants to know, how good are his eyes? How far can they see?
I don't know the exact number for how far they can see. I imagine a couple 100 feet away. So these guys, again, are going to be opportunistic hunters. They're going to be hanging out on their tree branch or in their cavity, and they're just going to swoop down, sort of make a U shape, and then swoop back up. They're not going to really be flying around looking for their food all too much.
And Joy says, I thought owls were nocturnal. Why is he awake during the day?
So he's going to be awake during the daytime because he is an ambassador animal, so his sleep schedule has changed a little bit to be out during the daytime. But when I put him back in his enclosure, he's going to go back in his nest box and go to sleep. But again, owls don't sleep the full time or 8 hours like we do. They're going to take short little naps every once in a while and wake up to check for predators. And these guys are exposed to the sunlight all the time, so it's not like the light is harmful to his eyes.
So Caitlin wants to know how many owls we have here at the zoo.
In total, we have 3 owls. So we have Cisco, our great horned owl, which you might have seen last Saturday. We have Sherlock, and we also have his companion, Watson. And those are both eastern screech owls.
Okay. All right, I think that we have touched upon all the questions that have come through right now. So I'll give it another minute in case anybody has some final questions they want to ask about this little guy. In the meantime, again, I encourage you, if you're able, to press that donate button. It's so important for us to keep these going. We miss our visitors. We really do. The keepers miss them. Our entire staff is missing having folks in during this time of year. So we're glad to be able to give you folks the opportunity to see some of our animals virtually. And Tegan says thank you, and thank you right back.
Of course. And remember, so owls do fly silently. I don't think I hinted about this when I talked about Cisco. So when you see an owl, that's great, but you're never going to hear them fly. And the reason for that is because on his feathers, he has sort of serrated edges, and that fluffy down inside of him. So those serrated edges, there's sort of comb-like structures on his feather, I should say, break up any sound that moves over his feathers, and that extra down sort of muffles any sound that he makes.
So he's super quiet, and with his camouflage, he blends in. So he is definitely a super predator.
Yeah,
all right.
So owls are like little ninjas. They've got built-in camouflage. They don't make any noise, and they've already got their built-in weapons as well.
Oh, so Lindsay is asking, if we buy a membership, does that help the overall upkeep of the zoo? And yes, your memberships, again, go toward helping the zoo fulfill its mission and help to support the Zoo Society that supports all of our education programs and our special events. And so every little bit, when you donate or you buy a membership, in one way or another, it comes back to help the zoo. Another couple of last questions. Dominic is asking what they eat besides mice.
Yeah, these guys are going to be eating insects, so beetles and worms and mosquitoes. There might be some smaller birds, and occasionally the bat or so. And then, again, the smaller things on the ground like amphibians, crawfish, reptiles, and mice and voles and things like that.
And Brittany wanted to know, what is their typical wingspan? So
his wingspan's going to be between 18 and 24 inches.
And then Caitlin, last question here, wants to know, what sound does this owl make?
He makes that trilling noise, or that tremolo, so the higher trilling going to a lower noise. These guys also do make that horse whinny. So if you're out in the woods and you hear a horse and you're like, I'm not near a farm, it's going to be an eastern screech owl.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining us today with Sherlock. And if you like these keeper chats, be sure to give us lots of hearts, lots of thumbs up. And we will see you same time tomorrow, 11 o'clock,
right,
here with us at
joining
the zoo. Thanks so much, folks. You guys have a great day.